So I have made an analysis on Tomorrow is Too Far, um, and I will start by presenting the novel. Um, and the short story Tomorrow is Too Far. It's about this unknown narrator, her brother Nonso, and her cousin Darcy. And the story recalls their last summer at their grandmother's house in Nigeria, and it portrays how her brother is favored by the grandmother and that the narrator has fallen in love with her cousin, but that is another summer. It all changed direction when Nonso dies and also has to be transported back to his mother in America. When the narrator talks to her mother about his death, it is clear that the mother also has favorized Nonso, and the narrator ends up lying about who is responsible for his death. And I think the story is about how Nigerian culture have a tendency of favorizing boys over girls. This is might because they see the boys as them who has to pass the family and their beliefs on. And therefore we see how this main character ends up in a theme of jealousy and has to kill her own brother to climb up in this family hierarchy. And this is a symbol of the Nigerian culture where there's a main character where this main character wishes more equality between the two genders. But the question is if this ends up in a success. And I will, through an analysis, answer this question by looking at the narrative, the language, symbols, theme, and a perspective to another African text. Okay, so the narrative is told in the second person narrative, which is indicated by the use of the personal pronoun you. As we can see in this first quote. And the next two quotes, I will tell about them that the second person narrator sometimes create a distance to the reader and sometimes the opposite. And the first quote shows how the second person narrator will not let us hear about her feelings when her brother dies, but in the second quote shows how we get access to her feelings while describing their way of picking fruit and climbing trees. So it seems like the narrator wants to escape from this guilt of killing her brother, and therefore we don't get any thoughts or feelings directly from the narrator when he has died, because maybe she wants to lean the focus on other characters like the grandmother she tries to blame. Yeah. And I just want to point out that I haven't included pages and lines on my quotes because I thought it would take time from my presentation if I had to say the lines and the pages every time I use a quote. So yeah, but I have found them in the text and you can see the screenshots. So yeah, then I have some symbolism, and the first quote is shows how the tree is a symbolism of this hierarchy that the grandmother creates for her grandchildren. And it shows how it is important for the narrator to be better at climbing than the brother. And this is might because the grandmother has made him as the favorite and that she only lets him climb the trees. So the narrator wants to express that she is better, maybe that she's a better climber, but that she cannot show it because the grandmother will not let her. And this symbolism creates kind of a link to the symbolism of the snake, which we can see in the second quote on the screen. This quote shows how the snakes around them are toxic, and with a bite, you're dead. And therefore, I think, I don't think it, but the narrator has to kill his brother in the trees if she wants to get him down in this hierarchy as the tree symbolizes, if she wants to climb up self. And this is why it ends up with the brother dying by the bite of the snake. This is a symbolism of the attention that the narrator misses. So this is a very authentic, because this is very authentic, sorry, because boys have a bigger role in Nigerian culture than girls have. So the narrator wants to get away with these rules and this low equality between the genders, and she wants to come closer to her grandmother, and the only way is to get away with the brother. But this does not end up like she wishes, because her cousins start making distance to her, and she gets a more strained relationship with her mother, and actually no contact with her father because they get divorced, her parents. So yeah. So I have chosen to look at the language also. Why is my PowerPoint so... Okay, now it worked. First of all, I have looked on the use of metaphorical language throughout the story. So in the first quote, we see how her hate for her brother growing is made stronger because she can feel it all the way in her nostrils. And at the same time, her love for her cousin also is made metaphorical. And it makes her pathos stronger because we are feeling that we are getting into her feelings and almost empathizes with her as a character. But in these two other quotes, we see how repetition is used by starting many of the passages with it was the summer. And this is created to show how the narrator cannot forget that summer. It is, and that is because it's the summer she kills her brother, and her family takes even more distance to her. And it is convincible that she has maybe regretted the action in her emotions of jealousy. And therefore the author creates this language device to make us understand the narrator's thoughts after her brother's death. Yeah, and now I will move on to perspective. If the computer wants to. Yeah. And first of all, this novel shows how African authors can obtain to create a story with an authentic African perspective. So when Chimamanda Ngozi talks about the single story and that American novels have made a wrong single story of Africa, then this novel becomes a great example on how African authors can create great stories with their own more authentic perspective. And an example of this is when they are picking fruits from the trees instead of drinking ginger beer, as she uses as an example in the stories that she wrote as a kid. Then it's more authentic than the example she used from an American novel. Yeah, and another perspective is Things Fall Apart, which is the novel by Chinua Achebe. And this is because we see how hardworking people are portrayed by men in her story. And therefore, this has a link to Tomorrow is the Far, because it is also about how Nigeria has not reached that point where equality between the two genders are a reality. Um, and therefore, the two stories portrayed the men as the ones who work to get the money for the family, and the ones who bring the family's name further. And we can see that when the grandmother gets very angry when Nonso dies, because she wants this family name um, to come further in, yeah, in the country.